You're listening to Drive Time. And now, Bill Bunkley.
All right, we're back, and it is Florida primary time, and I'm Bill Bunkley, of course, your host on Drive Time, and we are doing our best to keep you informed. And I want you to start thinking. And how do we do that? Well, I have a recommended voter guide that is, of course, out there for your perusal. But I want to tell you, it's up to you to study the candidates. It's up to you to decide on what God is telling you in some of these races. And guess what? In some of these races, it's not easy. Why? Because we have several candidates in some instances who love the Lord, who have a great background in serving Him, and they're offering themselves up for public service. And to some degree, I always sort of dislike the primaries because there's a lot of family feuds. And because there's a lot of guys and gals I respect out there, it's hard to weigh in. But sometimes we just have to do the best we can to weigh through it. My next guest is someone who's really impressed me. And, of course, we won't go much into his background. We've had a chance to talk about that before. But he's someone who has not only served us on two separate occasions in the armed forces, a couple of different branches. He's also been in the ministry. He served as a chaplain, and he's bringing all of that expertise right here to the Congressional District 13 race. And, of course, that is the district right in the central part of Pinellas County. And, of course, Darren Ayres is my guest this afternoon. And, Darren, it's good to have you back with us again.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I know we want to talk about your campaign, and I'm excited because this is a campaign where people, if they would like to, if you've never been involved with a campaign, especially if you're a social conservative and you want to have a campaign where you can get involved, maybe your middle school or high school kids can get involved, this would be a great one for you to get an idea of what the political process is all about in America. So we'll talk about volunteers in just a moment. But I want to talk with you today. We want to talk about voter guides because you as a candidate, you've gotten your first taste of, number one, how many voter guides you can get.
Oh, my.
And as someone that's running with a limited staff, you got to decide, well, which ones do I respond to, which ones do I don't, which ones do I get to when I can get to them. But we're going to talk today a little bit about the voter guides that you are a social conservative.
Yes.
Okay. And they're voter guides from social conservative candidates, social conservative organizations. But even some of those are a little bit difficult to walk through. You have been filling out some voter guides that may have, because of the way you had to answer the questions, may question what you would or would not do in terms of, say, constitutional amendments. Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about some of the challenges you've had in filling out some of these.
Well, you're right, Bill. Of course, you've been through this before, so you understand. There are so many voters' guides. It was amazing to me of all the letters I would get, all the emails I would get, how many different right-to-life organizations there are that are out there. And when you start to realize how many of them there are, you get to thinking, wow, how much more effective might they be if they could work together? And they probably do at some level. But that's such an important cause, and they're out there. But yes, it seems like that you could answer one voter's guide with a support, and you turned around with the exact same issue, but it was an oppose on a different voter's guide. And there was one of them that was interesting for me, and that was from the Council of Catholic Bishops, and I think that from Florida. And I think we're pretty much, 90-95%, even though I'm an old Baptist, right along the line with what they've got going on. But some of the questions, when you make it a three-part question, to say I support one part, but you might oppose a different part. So there are really challenges as they come up through there. Now, I know you have talked with your listeners many times about voters' guides, and you talk about your recommendations, and then you encourage them to pray about those and then to go into research and to get involved. And that's really what I think the voters' guides are good for as much as anything, is to stimulate conversation, to get people thinking about coming up and the vote, the elections that are coming up, and then to give them an opportunity to go to a website, go to a Facebook page, go out and do the Twitters and just see what somebody really stands for when you get down into the details. Now, there's one in particular that has caused some questions, and it has resulted in a lot of phone calls to my campaign. Not only to me, but other people who've been supporting me in this campaign, strong Christians who lead groups of people, and they've received phone calls as well. And that was one that you had mentioned in your last group, the Florida Family Policy Council. Now, I think that John and I would be,
as in John Stenberger.
As in John Stenberger, you probably couldn't slide a piece of paper really between us on most of these issues. But then again, you have to look at the way the questions are asked. And in this particular one, for instance, on the traditional marriage, would you support or oppose a constitutional amendment to make marriage between a man and a woman? And my answer was I would oppose a constitutional amendment. Now, that doesn't in any way, shape, or form mean that I'm in favor of same-sex marriage, because I absolutely am not. I understand what Scripture says, not only just in the Old Testament, but also in the New Testament about those types of relationships and that they're wrong. But I look at it and I go, we've already got a Defense of Marriage Act out there. We already have a law on the books for the United States of America that says marriage is between one man and one woman. But what's happening with that law? It's just not being enforced by our current administration. And our current Congress is allowing them to get away with not enforcing that particular law. They're just kind of choosing to say, well, it may be a law, but we're going to ignore it and not have it out there. I say we need congressmen and congresswomen who will stand up and enforce what we already have. Another one very similar to that was the constitutional amendment on the right to life, saying that life begins at conception. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in that as well. But again, I'm real protective of the Constitution. And I look at the Constitution and say, wait a minute, it already says that there is a right to life. That's the first one. And then, of course, we know it goes on to say to liberty and to the pursuit of happiness as well. But right to life is there. So I said, why don't we just support and defend that? I had someone ask me the other day, they said, well, if we put a constitutional amendment in there, then they don't have any alternatives. And I had to point out to him, I said, we have the First Amendment now that guarantees religious liberty. But what's happening with our current administration, with our current Congress? Mm-hmm. Well, the current administration is totally throwing that out the window. They're saying that you don't have the free exercise, as the Constitution says, of your religious preferences. They're going to try to tell you what you can and can't do. And so far to date, our current Congress has not done anything to tell this president and his administration that he's got to stop that. So even having constitutional amendments doesn't guarantee that we're going to be able to do things the way I think you and I believe God wants us to do things in our society. What it requires is for Christian people to get up and go vote.
Listen to the voice of Darren Ayres. Of course, he is a candidate for the Republican primary, which you're voting on right now through your absentee ballots in Pinellas County, through your early voting in Pinellas County, and through the primary that's coming up on the actual date of Tuesday, August the 14th. This is the race that if you would like to support Darren Ayres, this is the race to be engaged in. Now, want to remind you that you can, we'll give you an idea on how you can connect up with Darren Ayres in just a minute. And by the way, as I mentioned before, this is one of those campaigns that not only if you like to hook up with Darren in terms of his candidacy, this is a great campaign that you can come out and do some volunteering. Now, you've got a wide area there in Pinellas County, and we're getting down to very critical times. So there's opportunities for envelope stuffing. There's opportunities for putting signs up or delivering or holding signs on street corners, going door to door, and, of course, opportunities for financial contributions. Tell us a little bit about how folks can plug in as volunteers.
Well, great. Yes, it's this is the heavy time right now. Of course, we've been busy at this for 6-8 months. But now's when the voter is really beginning to pay attention. Now's when the volunteers are getting out there and they're looking and saying, who do we want to get behind? Because certainly when you have a race that only lasts, the position, the term is only 2 years, you can't spend 9 or 10 or 11 months of that 2 years constantly with all of your voters out there focused and have their attention. Tomorrow night's a great example. Tomorrow night we're meeting with a homeschool co-op leader. And several of the families that come, the co-op she has consists of 250 different families. She's invited some other co-ops to come participate as well. What they want to do is they want to know how they can get involved. They've been sitting back, they've been watching, much like I was a year or two ago. This is my first time to run for any type of elected office. I've been in business, I've been in the military, I've been in ministry, but this was my first time to step up. And they're seeing very much what I was, that things aren't getting fixed. That the country is continuing to become more of a secular nation when we really believe that most people are not secular, we still are a Christian nation. And they're saying, okay, the time is here. I know I have to get involved. I can no longer sit on the sidelines. How can we do that? Well, if you want to get involved with my campaign, one way is go to my website, restoringtrust.org, restoringtrust.org. There you can sign up to be a volunteer, and we can get in touch with you. This week on Friday and on Saturday, we've got events planned where we're going to be putting together, as you'd mentioned, stuffing envelopes. We're going to be stuffing little yellow or little clear bags to go hang on doorknobs of voters, Republican voters, which is the primary I'm running in Pinellas County in District 13. So they can come, they can be a part of that. They can help stuff those bags. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to get out and we're going to walk those neighborhoods, and we're going to talk to people at the door if they're home. If not, we're going to leave a bag with information on there about me. And there may be some other candidates that will be joining in, and they'll be there with their volunteers, and we'll all go out and we'll be walking together. Then on Election Day is a big time, because we want to have, there's 143 polling places in District 13. And we've identified those that have the largest number of Republicans that show up and vote. And we want to have a volunteer who stands there and is wearing a Darren Ayres for Congress T-shirt with a card in their hand. And when that Republican voter walks in, to place that in their hand so they know who the choices are and something about that candidate before they walk in to vote.
All right, step one is go to his website right now, restoringtrust.org. That's restoringtrust.org. And by going to that website, you'll get a chance to read his bio. And by the way, you want to spend some time doing this, especially in Darren Ayres' case, because we've had a chance to talk to him about his background on a previous interview here on Drive Time. We didn't want to talk about the same thing today. And again, the main thing is today he wanted to talk about how he is responding to some of these questionnaires and how some of those questions are put to him, because as a social conservative, he is committed to so many of the various aspects of what that social conservatism is all about, of course, based on biblical principles. And I know I've been a candidate, and sometimes those candidate questionnaires are very difficult to fill out. And again, I want to tell you, if you're in Pinellas County, this would be one good example, but throughout our WTBN listing area, I hopefully for the primary, and if not for the general election, get involved with the candidate. If you've got someone that really is representative of your views, like I'm sure Darren Ayres is representative of many of the views of the listeners of this station. Hey, if you can get involved and give him a hand, that would be greatly appreciated. So one more time, give us that website to Darren on how to get in touch with you. And if there's a phone number, give us a phone number as well.
Bill, the website is restoringtrust.org. Phone number is 727-288-1382.
One more time, the phone number.
727-288-1382. Social conservative, fiscal conservative, national defense conservative. I got all three legs. Thank you, Bill.
All right. Of course, that is District 13, Pinellas County, and that is Darren Ayres. And again, my pleasure to have you with us.